Let's begin by offering our respects to the founder Acharya of ISKCON, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai. Jai. Jai.
Yes, so what did we see in the previous class?
We finished the chapter 17, Divisions of Faith.
Divisions of Faith, yes. So what did we see in the chapter?
We saw this, no, the Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat.
Yes, Om Tat Sat. In the last part, Krishna is explaining how by chanting Om Tat Sat, we can purify any activity. Okay, what else did we see before that? He explained charity in the three modes. And then we saw penances in the three modes. And before that, he told us how there is austerity of the body, austerity of
sacrifice,
and austerity of the mind. And yes, before that, he told us sacrifices in the three modes. So this was chapter 17.
Which chapter is it, Mataji? And which verse is it?
Today we are starting chapter 18 from the beginning, Mataji.
Okay, Mataji. Can I read the translations whenever?
Yes, of course.
18 and it's verse number 1.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Hari.
Hare Krishna. So chapter 18 is titled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. It has a total of 78 verses. It is the longest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But there is no connection between chapter 17 and chapter 18 as such. This is how we've seen previously, how every chapter has a connection with the previous chapter. But chapter 18 doesn't have a connection with chapter 17 because chapter 18 is just a summary of all that we have seen so far in 17 chapters. So therefore, it has no particular connection with chapter number 17. Whatever we see in chapter 18, these concepts we have already seen before. It's not new to us. Krishna has already said it before, but now he's coming to a conclusion. So therefore, he's summarizing all his teachings to Arjuna. But before we start learning, reading, reciting this chapter, we need to understand what is the benefit of learning this chapter. So these stories are from the Gita Mahatmya of the Padma Purana, which is a conversation between Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. Okay, so we need one volunteer for the other text. Who can read the other text?
I can read, Mataji.
Okay, thank you, Mehak. Can you please read what is on the screen?
Yes. Parvati said, "My dear husband, You have told me the glories of the 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, kindly relate the glories of the 18th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Lord Shiva said, O daughter of the Himalayas, Parvati, please listen to the glories of the 18th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is higher than the Vedas and the giver of unlimited bliss. When it enters into one's ears, it destroys all material desires. For the pure devotee, it is divine nectar. It is Lord Vishnu's very life, and it is solace to the hearts of Lord Indra and the demigods, as well as the great yogis headed by Sanaka and Sananda. One who recites it sends the messengers of Yamaraja far away. There is no other recitation which can go quickly, which can so quickly destroy all sin and free one from the threefold miseries of this world. Now listen with great devotion.
And after this, Lord Shiva goes on to recite the history of Lord Indra losing his throne. So Lord Shiva says that one day Indra was sitting peacefully in the capital city um, of Amravati. Amravati is the capital city of Lord Indra's abode. It was designed by Vishwakarma, the celestial architect. And Lord Indra resides there with his wife Sachi, and he's served by the Devatas, by the demigods. So one day Indra was peacefully sitting in Amravati, and he sees that a very beautiful person has arrived there, whom the servants of Lord Vishnu were serving. When he saw this, when Lord Indra saw this person entering, he fell down from his throne. He is now on the ground, and even his crown has fallen off. And the people who were worshipping Lord Indra, they picked up the crown of Lord Indra, which fell off from his head, and now they have placed it on the head of this beautiful person who has just arrived. So, what does that mean? This means that they have made this person who has walked in as the new Indra. They have coronated him as the new Indra. So then all the demigods and denizens of the heavenly planets, they performed arati and sang songs to this new Indra. Great sages came there, chanted Vedic mantras, gave him their blessings. Gandharvas and Apsaras, they sang and danced very joyfully. And seeing all this, the old Lord Indra was very surprised. And he's thinking now that this person, this new Indra, has never dug any wells, he never planted any trees, he donate grains during a drought, he has not done any kind of fire yagyas, he has never given a charity in a holy dham. Then how come he managed to get my post? How come he managed to get my position? So Lord Indra feels greatly disturbed and he goes to Lord Vishnu in the ocean of milk in the Shir Sagar and he asks him some questions. He tells him, I did so many fire yagyas, so many pious activities in the past, so that I should be installed as the king of heaven. But this person has never done any such thing. So how come then he has obtained my throne? He is asking Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu says that person has daily recited 5 shlokas from chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. And as a result of that, he has by default, he has already attained the results of all sorts of pious activities, all sorts of punya karmas and the yagyas. And after enjoying as the king of heaven for several years, he will attain my abode, Lord Vishnu tells him. And he tells him that if you also do the same, then you will also attain my divine abode. So after this old Lord Indra, he takes the form of a Brahman and he goes to a town called Kalegrami on the banks of river Godavari. There he comes across a pure Brahmana who has perfectly understood the secret of all Vedic literatures. And he requests this Brahmana to please teach him the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So Lord Indra also started reciting 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita for some time, and then he attained Vaikuntha Loka. And after he attains Vaikuntha Loka, he realizes that the pleasure he experienced as the king of heaven is nothing compared to the pleasure he is experiencing in Vaikuntha Loka. And then Lord Shiva concludes. Let's read the last two paragraphs.
From here, right, my dear Parvati?
Yes.
My dear Parvati, for this reason, the great sages especially chant this 18th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and by so doing, very quickly attain the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Everyone who hears or studies this Gita Mahatmya very quickly destroys all sins which he has accumulated, and that person who remembers this discourse with great faith attains the results of all kinds of pious activities and great sacrifices, and after enjoying all worldly opulence attains the abode of Lord Vishnu.
So there is no need to separately endeavor to do punya karmas, to do pious activities, to do yagyas, to do dig wells, give in charity. There is no need to separately endeavor all this. When one reads the 18th chapter, one automatically gets the benefit of doing everything else, as Lord Shiva himself says in the Gita Mahatmya. Let's read what Prabhupada writes about this chapter.
Srila Prabhupada explains, actually, the Bhagavad Gita is finished in 17 chapters. The 18th chapter is a supplementary summarization of the topics discussed before. In every chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses that devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. This same point is summarized in the 18th chapter as the most confidential path of knowledge. As in the second chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described, in the 18th chapter also the summary of all instruction is given. To emphasize the goal of surrender to Krishna, the essence of previous chapters is taught in the final chapter. Krishna begins his summary by reiterating his prescription that Arjuna should renounce the fruit of work, not work itself. Thus, Krishna reviews that dutiful, detached work brings no reaction.
So in this 18th chapter, the essence of the previous chapter is taught by Krishna. So this is a long chapter. As we discussed, the longest chapter, 78 shlokas. It is divided into 11 sections. First 12 verses give us a summary of the first 6 chapters, or the karma section of the Gita. And then in section 2, from 13 to 18, we see a summary of the jnana section, which is again very technical. And then we have the summary of the yoga ladder. We are going to revisit the yoga ladder from section 3 to section 8. Then in section 9, we see what are the benefits for one who studies the Bhagavad Gita and what are the benefits for one who teaches the Bhagavad Gita. So both the teacher and the student, both of them stand to gain. It's a win-win situation for both the parties. Then section 10, Arjuna is firmly fixed now. So finally Arjuna, he is convinced, he is fixed up and he's ready to fight. And the last 5 shlokas, we see Sanjaya's predictions. So the Bhagavad Gita begins with Dhritarashtra Uvacha and ends with Sanjaya Uvacha. So between Dhritarashtra Uvacha and Sanjaya Uvacha, we have this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. Okay, let's read this.
Section 1, 18.1 to 18.12. Summary of chapters 1 to 6. Karma section. A true sannyasi does not renounce his activities, but is detached from their fruits. Krishna concludes that renounced order of life, sannyasa, and renunciation of the fruits of action, tyaga, are the same. Work performed in this way is renunciation in the mode of goodness.
Okay, so let's see. Krishna, this chapter begins with Arjuna asking a question. But before we begin, please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Okay, let's hear the shloka.
अथ अष्टादशोऽध्यायः अर्जुन उवाच सन्न्यासस्य महाबाहो तत्त्वमिच्छामि वेदितुम् त्यागस्य च हृषीकेश पृथक् केशिनिषूदन
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Arjun said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyag, and of the renounced order of life. Sannyas, O killer of Keshi demon, master of the senses. Hare Krishna.
So Arjuna is asking the question, Tyaga or Sannyasa. He wants to understand the purpose of Tyaga and the purpose of Sannyasa. So he's thinking that they are two different things, but we will see Krishna, and we have already seen also, Krishna says that they are the same thing. He wants to know, because again, Arjuna is thinking that if I take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, if he has to take sannyas, then how is he going to fight? And if he's going to fight, then that means he is not renouncing. And Krishna has been speaking about how one has to be renounced, how one must be detached from the material world. So he's thinking, okay, if I have to be renounced, then it means I have to take sannyas. So then how am I going to fight the war? Right? So we will see how Krishna re-answers this question. By what names Arjuna is referring to Krishna in this verse?
Keshi Nisunda.
Yeah, Keshi Nisudana. Keshi Nisudana
Nisundana.
means?
Killer of Keshi demon.
Yes, killer of Keshi demon. So Keshi was a very formidable demon that Krishna had killed. Therefore, one of his names is Keshi Nishudana. The doubts are also compared to demons. So just as how one must get rid of the demons, one must also get rid of the doubts one has in mind. So the doubts are compared to demons. So one must get rid of demon-like doubts. And Arjuna has a doubt now. So he's clearing up his doubt from his spiritual master, Krishna. What other name of Krishna is here?
Rishikesha,
Rishikesha. Rishikesha means?
master of the senses.
Master of the senses. So because Krishna is the master of the senses, he can provide peace. He can provide mental serenity to Arjuna. He can ease his doubts. He can ease his concerns, questions, and he can bring about tranquility in his mind. Therefore, he's calling him, he's referring to him as Rishikesha. One more name.
Mahabhav is for Arjuna, right? Oh,
Yes,
mighty armed one.
exactly. Yeah. Mahabaho, we have seen in the past, Krishna has used this name to refer to Arjuna. But here Arjuna is referring to Krishna as Mahabaho. So Mahabaho actually is a general term that can be used for Kshatriyas because it means mighty armed one. So therefore he's referring to him as Mahabaho. So Mahabaho is a name that is used both for Krishna as well as for Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, let's read this.
As in the second chapter, a synopsis of the whole subject matter was described. In the 18th chapter also, the summary of all instruction is given. The purpose of life is indicated to be renunciation and attainment of the transcendental position above the three material modes of nature. Arjuna wants to clarify the two distinct subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, namely renunciation, tyaga, and the renounced order of life, sannyasa. Thus, he's asking the meaning of those two words.
So he's asking the meaning of Tyaga and Sannyasa. Let's see what Krishna answers.
श्रीभगवानुवाच काम्यानां कर्मणां न्यासं सन्न्यासं कवयो विदुः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं प्राहुस्त्यागं विचक्षणाः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desires is what great learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyasa. And giving up the results of all activities is what the wise call renunciation, tyaga. Hare Krishna.
So what is sannyasa? Giving up activities that are based on material desire. Giving up the activities that are based on material desire. That is sannyas. And what is tyaga? Giving up the results of all activities. That is tyaga, according to this verse. But we have to understand, is Krishna stating his own opinion here? Is this definition that is being given here is Krishna's definition?
Mataji, please say again.
The definition of sannyas and tyaga that is given in this verse, is that given by Krishna? Is Krishna stating his opinion here?
Yeah, because
Yes.
Bhagavad Gita is said spoken by Krishna, right?
And it says the Supreme Personality of Godhead said.
Okay, so what did he say? What is Krishna saying? Krishna is stating,
Experiencing the person.
Krishna
That
is stating the opinion of other great learned men.
but
See
he
there.
is saying it as it is, or like
Let's see. Now Krishna is saying the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what great learned men call sannyas. And giving up the results of all activity is what the wise call renunciation. So Krishna begins to answer Arjuna's question, first of all, by stating the opinion of other great people or other wise men. Krishna is not giving his opinion here. He's just saying, this is what the wise men say. So this is not Krishna's opinion. Krishna is just stating the opinion of other wise men.
Are they talking about Rishi, Munis, Sannyasi, Brahmacharis, and Mahatmas when
Yeah,
they say wise learned?
wise learned men means those who are learned in the Shastra. Okay, those who are learned in the scriptures. Okay, but the point here is, this is not Krishna's opinion. Krishna will give his verdict later. Now he is beginning by saying that this is the opinion of the other learned wise men. Now let's see what Krishna says next.
त्याज्यं दोषवदित्येके कर्म प्राहुर्मनीषिणः यज्ञदानतपः कर्म न त्याज्यमिति चापरे.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai ho. Some learned men desire that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty, yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. Hare Krishna.
So now Krishna is again giving the opinion of others. He's saying that some learned men say that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up because all kinds of fruitive activities are faulty. And other sages, other learned men, they say that sacrifice, charity, and penances, these three things, yajna, dana, and tapa, should never be given up. So there are two opinions of the learned people. Now, Krishna is not yet giving his verdict. Okay, Krishna is just saying that, yes, these are the two opinions. So sometimes it so happens that both opinions are correct according to Shastra. So which of the two is more correct? Just as how that's why Shastra can be very bewildering for one if one learns the Shastra on their own. That's the reason why we need a bona fide spiritual master to make us understand the Shastra. Otherwise, it can be very, very bewildering because both statements seem to be correct. So then which one will take precedence? How to know that? Just as how in the Mahabharata, we have this incident of the disrobing of Draupadi, isn't it? When the messenger was sent to Draupadi and to break the news to her that your husband has lost you in the gambling match and now you have been summoned in the assembly. Her question was, did Yudhishthir lose me first or he lost himself? So then the messenger says, no, first he lost himself. So immediately Draupadi asked this question, which nobody was able to answer in the assembly. Even Bhishma Dev, he is one of the 12 Mahajans. He is the authority on the science of God. He knows Shastra perfectly. Even he was not able to answer this question of Draupadi. So we see how Draupadi is so supremely intelligent. No, she immediately came up with this question. What was Draupadi's question? If he lost me after he lost himself, then he lost his right on me also. So how can he gamble me? So then what did Bhishma Dev say? Bhishma Dev said, yes, there are he presented two statements in the Shastra and both statements are correct. What are the two statements? One is the wife belongs to the husband. And the other statement is a slave does not own anything. So Yudhishthir, when he gambled himself, he became a slave. So he does not own anything at all. So now he does not own even his wife. But on the other side, the wife always belongs to the husband. So Bhishma Dev said both statements are correct. Which of the two should gain precedence here? I cannot say, Bhishma Dev said. So you see, like this, Krishna is saying that this opinion is there of the learned sages that all fruitive activity should be given up. And on the other side, there is this opinion that sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be given up. So which of the two should take precedence? Let's read this.
There are many activities in the Vedic literature which are subjects of contention. For instance, it is said that an animal can be killed in a sacrifice, yet some maintain that animal killing is completely abominable. Although animal killing in a sacrifice is recommended in the Vedic literature, the animal is not considered to be killed. The sacrifice is to give a new life to the animal. Sometimes the animal is given in a new animal. Sometimes the animal is given a new animal life after being killed in the sacrifice. And sometimes the animal is promoted immediately to the human form of life. But there are different opinions among the sages. Some say that animal killing should always be avoided, and others say that for a specific sacrifice it is good. All these different opinions on sacrificial activity are now being clarified by the Lord himself. Purport 18.3.
So Srila Prabhupada is giving another example of how there are two opinions on animal killing. Some people say that animal killing should always be avoided under any circumstances, and some others say that animal killing should be allowed under certain conditions. So both statements are correct. Which of the two statements have to be taking precedence according to time, place, and circumstances? The next question. So like this, there are such statements in the Shastras. Let us see what is Krishna going to say.
निश्चयं शृणु मे तत्र त्यागे भरतसत्तमा त्यागो हि पुरुषव्याघ्र त्रिविधः सम्प्रकीर्तितः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Gita, O best of Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Hare Krishna.
So now Krishna is saying that hear my judgment. Although there are different opinions, finally Krishna is going to give his judgment. And of course, Krishna's judgment is the most important, is going to be the final judgment, because all the laws, all the Vedic scriptures, all the different laws are given by him only. So definitely Krishna's opinion stands above all the Vedas. And then Krishna says that renunciation is to be of three kinds. So he's going to explain also renunciation in the mode of goodness, renunciation in the mode of passion, and renunciation in the mode of ignorance.
यज्ञदानतपः कर्म न त्याज्यं कार्यमेव तत् यज्ञो दानं तपश्चैव पावनानि मनीषिणाम्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai ho. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna's opinion, Krishna's final verdict is what? That these three things, sacrifice, charity, and penance, yagya, dana, and tapa, should never be given up. They must be performed, Krishna says. Why they should be performed? Because it purifies. It purifies us. What to speak of us, it purifies even the great souls. So for the sake of purity of the heart, therefore one must perform sacrifice, charity, and penance. But in what mood we have to do these three things? That Krishna explains in the next verse. Oh, but before that, we need to read this. Let's read this.
Shri Baladeva Vidya Bhushana comments that just as fibers exist within the stem of a lotus, these three activities, sacrifice, charity, and penances, contain knowledge that purifies the heart and elevates one.
So Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, who is an acharya in our disciplic succession, he writes that fibers exist within the stem of a lotus. So by default, there is fiber in the stem of the lotus. In the same way, by default, when one performs these three activities, sacrifice, charity, and penances, it leads to purification of the heart. And why we need to purify our heart? We need to purify our heart so that we can get elevated spiritually. For our spiritual advancement, purification of the heart is very, very important. If the heart is still contaminated, if the heart still has impurities, then we cannot get elevated spiritually. Srila Prabhupada explains that what kind of activities should be avoided? The activities that are in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. For example, as we have discussed previously, the initial part of the Vedas deals with Karma Kanda, where you have different sacrifices, different rituals mentioned for fulfilling our materialistic desires. If you want to have a good son, then you do this yagya. If you want to get married to a good-looking husband, if you want a good-looking wife, so like that, there are different rituals given in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas for different material necessities or material desires, not necessities, but desires. So those kind of karma kanda activities, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that they should be avoided. But what kind of sacrifice, charity, and penances should be done? Those which will lead to purification of the heart, so that we can get elevated spiritually. Those kind of activities we must engage in. We should not give up those activities. But in what mood they should be done, Krishna explains in verse 6.
एतान्यपि तु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलानि च कर्तव्यानीति मे पार्थ निश्चितं मतमुत्तमम्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as matter of duty, O son of Partha. That is my final opinion. Hare Krishna.
So here Krishna is concluding his opinion, and his opinion is superior to all other previous opinions, of course, because it is coming from Krishna himself, the father of religion. So what is Krishna's verdict? What is Krishna proclaiming? He's saying that the true standard of renunciation is what? Detachment from the fruits while performing the duty. So activity should be performed without attachment or expectation of result, and they should be performed as a matter of duty. These activities should be done, but in this particular mood. And Krishna says, this is my final opinion. So one should not escape one's duties. You have to do it because it is your duty, and we do not expect anything in return. So this is the true spirit in which one must perform these activities.
नियतस्य तु सन्न्यासः कर्मणो नोपपद्यते मोहात् तस्य परित्यागः तामसः परिकीर्तितः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. 1 second, Mataji, my page has gone away.
No problem.
Prescribed duties should never be renounced if one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion. Such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
So now Krishna is going to explain renunciation in the three modes. Here he is explaining renunciation in the mode of ignorance. What is renunciation in the mode of ignorance? Is when it is done when renunciation is done because of illusion, when somebody gives up his prescribed duties under an illusion, under lack of proper knowledge, then it should be then it is in the mode of ignorance. Krishna says that prescribed duties should never be renounced, no matter what. We have to always do our prescribed duties. Each one of us has a has certain prescribed duties, isn't it? The parents have their prescribed duties, the wife, the husband, the children, the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, the shudras, each one in the society has their prescribed duties which should never be renounced, Krishna says. So one must not think that, oh, I want to become a sadhu, so let me give up my duty. No, you cannot do that. See, Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the purport, if you read the purport of 18.7, Srila Prabhupada gives two examples. One is that in sannyasa, it's prohibited for one to cook because a sannyasi lives on what he receives from other householders. But Srila Prabhupada explains that a sannyasi can cook for Krishna. His mentality, his consciousness is that I am cooking this for the pleasure of my deities, because he's worshipping some deities. So the deities have to be offered food. So he can cook and he can offer it for the deities because he's cooking it for the pleasure of his deities, which he is taking care of. Another example Srila Prabhupada gives is how a sannyasi may perform marriage ceremony for his disciple so that the disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. Not that he says that, oh, he's a sannyasi, how can he be performing marriage ceremonies? Because sannyasi means he's in the renounced order of life. But Srila Prabhupada says that one can perform marriage ceremony even if one is a sannyasi, so that the disciples can advance in consciousness. And that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada did. Although Srila Prabhupada was a sannyasi, he performed marriage ceremonies of his disciples. One such incident is in chapter 3 of the Prabhupada Leelamrita. Let's read this.
March 1971, Bombay. 11-day Hare Krishna festival, Pandala program at Cross Maidan in South Bombay. One evening, Prabhupada conducted a Vedic marriage ceremony and an initiation before thousands of people. The marriage was arranged between Vegavan, who was Swedish, and Padmavati Dasi, who was Australian. They completely enchanted the whole audience. She, with her ornate red sari and Indian jewelry, including a nose ring, and he, with his nice white dhoti and kurta and clean shaven head. 6 brahmacharis were initiated at that time also. Giriraja. The audience was impressed. First of all, they were amazed just to see foreign devotees, foreign sadhus. Then, on top of that, to see them being initiated. And even more than that, being married in front of 10,000 people. It was overwhelming. So during the ceremony, as Srila Prabhupada made the boy and girl husband and wife, he mentioned that she was from Australia and he was from Sweden. Then Srila Prabhupada said, "This is the real United Nations." And everyone burst into applause. It was the most glamorous, wonderful program. Srila Prabhupada, Leela Amrita, chapter 33.
So this was when Srila Prabhupada has returned to India uh, for again preaching purposes, and he has returned to India with his disciples, and they have organized programs in different cities. So this was a city of Bombay, a 11-day huge pandal program which was attended by thousands of people. And in one of those pandal programs, Srila Prabhupada conducted this marriage ceremony. And Srila Prabhupada himself explains that how his spiritual master created more brahmacharis and sannyasis. But when Srila Prabhupada went to the West, he saw that there is free intermingling of men and women. Therefore, it was not possible to create brahmacharis. And Srila Prabhupada explains that there is no need to create artificial brahmacharis. So, therefore, he got them married, grihasthas, so that in the grihastha ashram, together they can advance in Krishna consciousness. Let's read that very nice text from Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, Prabhupada was creating more brahmacharis and sannyasis for preaching work. But I am creating more grihasthas because in Europe and America, the boys and girls intermingle, so it is very difficult to keep one brahmachari. So there is no need of artificial brahmacharis. It is sanctioned. My Guru Maharaj wanted to establish Daivi Varnashrama. It doesn't matter whether one is sannyasi or one is grihastha or a brahmachari. The main principle is Bhagavad Bhajan. But practically also, I may inform you that these married couples, they are helping me very much because, for practical example, I may say that one of my god brothers, a sannyasi, was deputed to go to London for starting a temple. But 3 or 4 years he remained there and he could not execute the will. Therefore, he was called back. Now, I sent 3 married couples, all of them are present here, and they work so nicely that within 1 year we started our London temple, and that is going on very nicely. Reference Yamuna Devi, A Life of Unalloyed Devotion.
So, see, before Srila Prabhupada, other god brothers of his had gone to the West and they tried to preach Krishna consciousness in the Western world, but they were not successful. They failed and they came back. But Srila Prabhupada succeeded. Why? Because he was very expert in adjusting according to time, place, and circumstances, at the same time, not compromising on the philosophy. So we see how Srila Prabhupada says, what is the bottom line? The bottom line is we want to preach and we want to make devotees. Now, whether you make devotees in the Brahmachari ashram or the Grihastha ashram or the Vanaprastha or Sannyas, it does not matter. At the end of the day, the bottom line is we want to make devotees. So that's how Srila Prabhupada was so expert, and we see how Srila Prabhupada was so successful. Okay, now let's see renunciation and mode of passion.
दुःखमित्येव यत्कर्म कायक्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् सकृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. Hare Krishna.
So what is renunciation in the mode of passion? When one gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort. Now, let's say somebody is in a job which requires him to go early morning and start working from early morning. And he says that, oh, this is very troublesome. I have to get up in the cold and I have to go to work early morning. I'm not able to sleep properly. So this is very troublesome life. Let me just um, let me just become a sadhu, let me join the temple, and let me just be cool. Let me not have any worries, or out of fear of bodily discomfort. Oh, I have to work hard, I have to physically strain myself to work. It's so hard to earn money, I have to pay the fees of my children. Better I renounce and I just leave. No, he's escaping his prescribed duties. So if we give up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily comfort, then that is renunciation in the mode of passion. Such a person, or if he joins a temple because he's frustrated with material life, but he has no attachment to Krishna, then how is he going to help? Even in the temple, then it will be problematic. Because even in the temple, there are so many services that have to be taken care of, isn't it? It's not easy. We have one. We may live in an apartment with few members. We know what it takes to keep the house going, isn't it? And the temple is a much bigger property, much more people, and during festivals there are so many other people coming in. So it's that much more, it takes that much more effort to maintain a temple. So if a person is escaping his prescribed duties because he cannot take care of a few members in the house, and he goes to the temple, and if there is no attachment for Krishna, he's joined the temple only because he's frustrated with his material duties, but there is no attachment to Krishna, then he's not going to help much in the temple also. Detachment from material life, yes, it's important, but at the same time, attachment to Krishna also is important. And of the two, attachment to Krishna is more important. Let us see what is renunciation, the mode of goodness.
कार्यमित्येव यत्कर्म नियतं क्रियते अर्जुन सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव सत्यागः सात्विको मतः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Arjun, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done, and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna here is repeating what he already said in verse 6. What is Krishna saying? That renunciation, the mode of goodness, is what? When you perform your prescribed duty because it ought to be done. It has to be done, therefore you're doing the duty. And renouncing all material association. And number 3, renouncing all attachment to the fruit also. When it is done in this mode, with these 3 conditions, then the renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, he gives the example that a Krishna conscious man working in a factory does not associate with work of the factory, neither does he associate with the workers of the factory, and the fruit that he gets from that work that he dedicates to Krishna, then that is renunciation in Sattva Guna. That is renunciation in the mode of goodness. So in this mentality, if we do our prescribed duties, then that is renunciation in the mode of goodness. So basically, Krishna is telling Arjuna that you do your prescribed duty because it has to be done. You are a Kshatriya, your duty is to fight. So just fight. Don't be attached to the fruit that after fighting, what will I get? Will I be the king? Will I lose? Will my loved ones will die? Huh? Actually, Arjuna wasn't worried about losing the war. He was more worried about losing his loved ones. Remember his reasons he gave in chapter 1. Krishna is saying, don't be attached to the fruits of your duty and renounce all material association. Do it in this mentality. So then that is renunciation in the mode of goodness. Now Krishna defines an intelligent renouncer.
नद्वेष्ट्य कुशलं कर्म कुशलेनानुषज्यते त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो मेधावी छिन्न संशयः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The intelligent renouncer, situated in the mode of goodness, neither hateful of inner sumptuous work nor attached to a sumptuous work, has no doubts about work. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna is defining an intelligent renouncer, and Krishna is describing the symptoms of proper renunciation in this shloka. So what is it? First of all, one who is in Sattva Guna, the intelligent renouncer, first of all, he is situated in the mode of goodness. So he is in Sattva Guna, and he neither hates inauspicious work, nor is he attached to auspicious work. So which means he does not hate anyone or anything that troubles his body. He works in proper place at proper time without fearing the troublesome effects of his work. And he has no doubts about his work, Krishna says. So person in Sattva Guna, he is determined to act properly regardless of the pains or pleasures it may bring in the future. This is an intelligent renouncer, Krishna says. Let's read this.
It is said in Bhagavad Gita that one can never give up work at any time. Therefore, he who works for Krishna and does not enjoy the fruitive results, who offers everything to Krishna, is actually a renouncer.
So Srila Prabhupada explains how it is impossible for one to give up work at any time. It is not possible. We have discussed this before. and we have discussed all of this before, that how it's the nature of the soul to be active. And therefore, it's not possible for one to do zero activity. Some activity, some sense engagement we require, the soul requires. If we ask a child to just sit in one place, will the child sit? No. But if we give the child some engagement, okay, you sit and color these pages, then the child will be busy coloring and will sit in that place, isn't it? Because now the child has got something to engage the senses in. In the same way, the soul, by nature, the soul is active. The soul requires some activity. So it is not possible for one to renounce in the sense that do nothing at all. That is renunciation. No. Renunciation means you do the work, you do your prescribed duty, but don't be attached to the fruits. You give the fruits to Krishna. That is actually a renouncer. Now, one may say that, okay, Krishna is saying here that one has to, that is it possible? The question may arise, is it possible for one to just renounce all the work, both auspicious and inauspicious? Because here Krishna says that the intelligent renouncer is neither hateful of inauspicious work or attached to auspicious work. So one may ask, is it possible to completely give up both auspicious and inauspicious work? That Krishna answers in the next verse.
Nahi deha bhrita shakyam tyaktum karmanyasheshatah yastu karma phalatyagi satyagityavidhiyate.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities, but he who renounces the fruits of action is called one who has truly renounced. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna is saying it is indeed impossible. Nahi, Krishna says, which means certainly it is not possible at all. Highly impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities, which we already discussed, that it's the nature of the soul to be active. So therefore, it is not possible for us to give up all activities. But he who renounces the fruits of action is the one who is truly renounced, one who can give up the fruit of his action. He is a highly elevated soul. He is a true renouncer.
Anishtamishtam mishram cha trividham karmanah phalam bhavatyatyāginām pretya natu sannyasinām kvachid.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. For one who is not renounced the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed actions, and mixed after that, but those who are in the renounced order of life have no such results to suffer or enjoy. Hare Krishna.
So one may say, okay, previously Krishna says that it is impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities. So which means every embodied being has to engage in some activity. So one may ask, okay, now I have to engage in some activity. Now, if I engage in some activity, then obviously there is going to be a reaction. And to enjoy the reaction or to suffer the reaction, depending on whether the activity is good or bad, some reaction will be there, right? So for that reaction, that it means I have to again come back to enjoy or suffer those reactions. And as long as there is reaction, it's going to keep me in the material world. Because to enjoy also I have to come back, to suffer also I have to come back. So then how are we going to resolve this? So Krishna explains this in this particular verse. What is Krishna saying? For one who is not renounced, the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed, accrue after death. So the reaction is going to come. Desirable actions or undesirable actions, or a mixture of both desirable and undesirable action. Good karma, bad karma, or a mixture of good and bad karma. So the actions of these things will come after death for one who is not renounced, for one who has done those activities without being detached to the results. But for one who is in the renounced order of life, which means for one who has done the activities without being attached to the fruits of the activities or without being attached to the results of the activities, they have no such result to suffer or enjoy. Krishna is saying. So if we do it with the mentality that we are detached from the fruits of the work, then there is going to be no reaction. And when there is no reaction, then we can transcend the material world and go back to the spiritual world. Because there is no balance to pay off, right? To pay off or to enjoy. So with that, we come to the end of section 1. Let's see section 2. So section 1, what we saw so far was a summary of the karma section of the Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters. Now we will see a summary of the jnana section. And jnana section is a very technical section. We know, especially 13th chapter was the most technical chapter of the Gita. So we will see some technical concepts here. But we don't have to worry about these technical concepts. Remember, our process is not jnana yoga. Our process is bhakti yoga. So we don't have to worry so much about this. Anyway, we have to see it. So let's read.
Section 2, 18.13 to 18.18. Summary of chapters 13 to 17 Jnana section. Krishna cites Vedanta and analyzes activities as comprised of 5 factors. This is to help us perform activities without becoming bound. Most prominent of these factors is the super soul. Acting under super soul's direction, one is unaffected by reactions to his actions.
पञ्चैतानि महाबाहो कारणानि निबोध मे साङ्ख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai ho. O mighty arm Arjuna, according to the Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all actions. Now learn of these from me. Hare Krishna.
So Krishna describes that there are 5 factors which are responsible for the accomplishment of any action, whether good or bad, right or wrong, whatever it may be. But 5 factors are required for any action to be accomplished. What are those 5 factors? Krishna is going to explain in the next verse.
अधिष्ठानं तथा कर्ता करणं च पृथग्विधम् विविधाश्च पृथक् चेष्टा दैवं चैवात्र पञ्चमम्.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The place of action, the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. These are the 5 factors of action. Hare Krishna.
So what are the 5 things that are required to accomplish any activity, any action? First of all, the place of action, adhishthanam. Then we have the karta, the performer of the activity itself. Then we have karanam, which is the which are the instruments to carry out any action. In this case, it's the senses. Then we have cheshta, the endeavor itself, the effort to carry out the action, and ultimately the super soul. So which is the super cause of these 5 causes of action?
The super soul.
Super soul.
Super soul, yes, the super soul, the most important of all, isn't it? Because if the super soul doesn't sanction, then the activity cannot be carried out. Let's read this.
5 factors of action. Material causes. Adhishtanam. Place of action. Body. Karta. The performer or the worker. That is the consciousness reflected in false ego. Refers to the soul because he is acting to bring about the results of his activity. Third. Karanam. Instruments of action. Senses. Fourth, cheshtha, endeavor, because endeavor, effort to execute the activity. And then the ultimate cause is fifth, daivam, super cause. All our activities depend on the will of the super soul.
So if one is acting in Krishna consciousness, then one is acting under the direction of the super soul. One is acting under the direction of the most important cause, no? The super cause, daivam. So therefore, one does not have to worry about the reactions to the actions, because whatever he's doing it under the direction of the super soul. Let's read this text.
Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushan comments that we are doers. Our activities do spring from our own free will, but our endeavor is not the independent cause of action. If the jiva's being a doer is under the regulating control of the Supreme Lord, then we have to say that his activity does not proceed from his own will, and that he is actually just like a stone or some other inert object. In that case, don't the injunctions and prohibitions of scripture become useless? The answer is the jiva receives from the Supreme Lord a body and senses endowed with specific potencies, of which he then becomes the proprietor. Acquiring those potencies, the jiva exerts his free will and assumes control of his body and senses for the purpose of fulfilling karmic endeavors. The Supreme Lord, present within all these coverings, sanctions the jiva's activity and inspires him to act. In this way, there is no contradiction between the Supreme's control and the jiva's having his own willpower to act or to refrain from acting.
So why is Krishna mentioning these 5 factors is because he wants to make it clear that you are not the only one involved for you carrying out any activity. So you're not the, we are not the only reason, right? There are other 4 factors also involved. So when one makes statements out of false ego that I'm a self-made man or I was able to achieve this because of my hard work, then it's coming from false ego, and he has to be reminded that no, actually there are 4 other factors. Srila Prabhupada explains that this particular information of these 5 doers is available only to devotees, is available only to devotees. When we come in touch with a devotee, when we come in touch with a bona fide spiritual master, then we can understand that there are 5 causes. Otherwise, most people think that only they are responsible. They only know about one of these 5 factors, which is karta. So therefore, this is very, very important for us to understand that, yes, our effort, our endeavor, the person who's doing also there, it's also there, but it's not the only factor. Yeah, Harman, you raised your hand.
But if there is, if imagine if it weren't with the supreme bona fide master or in touch with the devotee, wouldn't there be 2? If you go back one slide, it would say, wouldn't it be Adi Histam, Histanam and Karta? Because they would consider the body as well, or only Karta.
Yeah, the problem is a non-devotee thinks that he is the body. So he doesn't differentiate between himself and the body. He thinks that I am this body. That's the mentality of a non-devotee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So therefore, see here, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan writes about how we have minute independence. So our activities come from our free will. It begins there because we desired it. Now, if we don't have the free will, if the free will is taken away by the Lord from us, then we will be like a stone or some inert object, just like robots. We are just doing because, okay, I press this button, walk forward, sit down, come backward, move left, move right. No, but we are not robots, because our relationship with the Lord is based on love. It has to be, if so therefore the Lord gives us minute independence, minute free will we have. So therefore when we misuse our independence, then we act against the Shastra. That doesn't mean that so yes, but again that activity has to be sanctioned by the super soul. So who takes responsibility for our action? Just because the super soul has sanctioned it, only we were able to do it, but that doesn't mean that the super soul is responsible for our activities. The responsibility is on us, because we desired it in the first place, we wanted it in the first place. The Lord has only sanctioned that which we want. And why does the Lord sanction it? Is because he does not interfere with our free will. The free will is never taken away from the living entity. So we have to take the responsibility for our actions. Therefore, we have to suffer the karmic reactions. Let's read this.
5 causes of the action of doing good business. Place of action. The businessman goes to a marketplace where there are many customers. The performer, the businessman himself. Instruments. The senses of the businessman must be in order to guard against cheating, hear offers, etc. Endeavor. The business that will be conducted. And the ultimate cause, above all, is the help from Super Soul, who dictates in such a way that everything is successful spiritually or materially.
Okay, so this is an example of how these 5 causes of action come together for a particular activity.
शरीरवाङ्मनोभिर्यन् कर्म प्रारभते नरः न्यायं वा विपरीतं वा पञ्चैते तस्य हेतवः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada says, whatever right or wrong action a man performs by body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 factors. Hare Krishna.
So now Krishna is saying that whatever right or wrong action a man performs. So what is right action? Right action is that which is done in accordance with Shastra. What is wrong action? Work done against the Shastra. So anyway, Krishna is saying whether it is right or wrong, whatever action a perform does is performed by body, mind, or speech. So Krishna is categorizing action into 3. Action that is done by body, by mind, or by speech. And he's saying that right action done by any of these 3 is caused by these 5 factors, which he has mentioned in the previous verse.
तत्रैवं सति कर्तारम् आत्मानं केवलं तु यः पश्यत्यकृतबुद्धित्वान् न स पश्यति दुर्मतिः.
Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. Hare Krishna.
So here Krishna is mentioning a durmatihi, a foolish person, a non-intelligent seer, one who sees non-intelligently, is one who thinks himself the only doer. So this is what we were discussing now. A foolish person, a durmati, is one who does not see all these 5 factors. He only thinks that he is the only doer. So he's only seeing one of the 5. So that Krishna says is not very intelligent. He cannot see things as they are because he has no information to this Shastric knowledge. He does not have this information. Such a person is durmati, Krishna says, foolish. Let's read this.
A non-intelligent person thinks he is independent, that only he is the doer, and fails to see his dependence on the final doer, the Supreme Lord.
So the modern education is creating more and more atheists. No, so many highly educated people, they say that, oh, we believe in what we can practically see. I believe in what I can practically see. I cannot believe in something that I don't see. So modern education, the more one is getting materially educated, the more highly, the more degrees one has materially, that much less faith one has on the Lord. So our modern education, unfortunately, is creating more and more atheists. And although they are materially qualified, Krishna says actually they are foolish because they do not see the dependence on the Lord. They do not see the dependence on the final doer, on the Supreme Lord. Let's read this.
The myth of the self-made man, thinking, by my power I have done it, keeps one bound in the material world. Therefore, in this verse, Krishna uses the word kevalam, only. Only I have done it. In 3.27, Krishna referred to such thinking, kartaham iti manyate, thinks I am the doer, as fit only for the vimudhas, or as like people. Then in 16.14, he characterized such thinking, Ishvaro ham aham bhogi. I am the lord of everything. I am the enjoyer, as demoniac. Here again, and this time quoting Vedanta as his authority, Krishna points out the lack of intelligence and the foolishness inherent in thinking ourselves the controllers and doers. Pasyati akrata buddhivitam nasa pasyati durmati.
Okay, let's go to 17.
यस्य नाहङ्कृतो भावो बुद्धिर्यस्य न लिप्यते हत्वापि स इमान् लोकान् न हन्ति न निबध्यते.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled through, though he kills man in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his actions. Can you explain this? Though he kills man in this world, he does not kill.
Yeah, so if he kills men in this world, he does not kill in the sense that if Arjuna is going to kill, but because he is doing it under these conditions, what are the conditions? Not motivated by false ego. So Arjuna is not going to be killing out of false ego, thinking that, oh, I want to enjoy the kingdom. Or he's not doing it out of envy that, oh, I don't want the Kauravas to enjoy the kingdom. It can be both, right? Somebody may want to enjoy something. On the other side, one may not want somebody else to enjoy. That may be the driving force. So Arjuna is not under any kind of false ego. He's not going to fight the war and he's not going to kill in the war out of this false ego. And his intelligence is not entangled, which means he clearly knows what is the reason that he's fighting. He's fighting because it is his duty, and he's fighting because it is the instruction of Krishna. So because Arjuna is going to kill under these conditions, not motivated by false ego, and because his intelligence is not entangled, although he kills, he does not kill, which means although he's killing, he is not going to get any reaction for that killing. He's karma free. That's what it means. Okay. Nor is he bound by his actions. So therefore he can be not bound. When one is not bound, it means one is liberated. See, in 16, Krishna is explaining the non-intelligent seer, and here in 17, Krishna is saying one who sees things in the right perspective. So here the person's intelligence is not entangled. So he's saying that this person is intelligent. Okay. So previous verse, those categories of people, they are bound, and in this verse, people who act under these conditions, they are not bound by these actions, so they are eligible for liberation. Let's read this.
In this verse, the Lord informs Arjuna that the desire not to fight arises from false ego. Arjuna thought himself to be the doer of action, but he did not consider the supreme sanction within and without. If one does not know that a super sanction is there, why should he act? But one who knows the instruments of work, himself as the worker and the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Sanctioner, is perfect in doing everything. Such a person is never an illusion. Personal activity and responsibility arise from false ego and a godlessness or a lack of Krishna consciousness.
Okay. More example given by Prabhupada.
Anyone who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the super soul or the supreme personality of Godhead, even though killing does not kill, nor is he ever affected by the reaction of such killing. When a soldier kills under the command of a superior officer, he is not subject to be judged. But if a soldier kills on his own personal account, then he is certainly judged by a court of law.
So this is how a soldier, if he is killing out of his duty because he's been instructed by his superior in the armed forces to kill, and he kills. Now he's not going to be tried in the court of law because what he has done is under the instruction of his superior and on duty, right? But if he kills without receiving instruction, if he kills a civilian just because, I mean, for whatever reason, then he's going to be tried under the court of law. So such a soldier who's killing under the instruction is killing, but he is not killing in the sense that he's not tried for that killing. So in the same way, when we do something under the direction of the super soul, then we do not take any reaction for the same.
ज्ञानं ज्ञेयं परिज्ञाता त्रिविधा कर्म चोदना करणं कर्म कर्तेति त्रिविधः कर्म संग्रहः.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower, and the three factors that motivate action, the senses, the work, and the doer are the three constitution of action. Hare Krishna.
So remember the beginning of chapter 13, Krishna asked Arjuna the meaning of 6 terms. What are the 6 terms? Prakriti, what is Prakriti? What is Purusha? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragya? What is Jnana? And what is Jnaya? That was what he wanted to know in 13.1 and 2. So here 2 out of the 6 are being mentioned. So remember, this is a summary of the Jnana section. Okay, so what are the 2 of the 6 questions that Krishna mentions here? Jnana and Jnaya. Jnana and Jnaya. Anyway, what is Krishna saying here? He is giving us 3 factors that motivate action and 3 constituents of action. Motivators of action means that which is an impetus or an inspiration to do any activity. And 3 constituents of action means 3 elements of any work that is done. So what are the 3 motivators of action? Krishna says knowledge, object of knowledge, and the knower. And what are the 3 constituents of action? The instruments of work, which is the senses, the work itself, and the worker or the doer are the 3 constituents of action. In the next slide, we have a clearer picture. Let's read this.
3 factors, motivators of action. Jnana, knowledge. Nayam, the objective of knowledge, that which has to be known as an impetus for action. And pariyata. How to pronounce, Mataji?
Parigyanata.
Pariyanata, the knower. Say a person goes to see some scenic scene, flower, birds, etc. That time there is Jnanam, Nayam, Pariyata. Pariyata is the person who is the knower, who wants to be the knower. Jnana is the process of knowledge, and Naya is the objective of knowledge. Another example, someone studying engineering. Jnana, but the objective is not knowledge but employment and then enjoyment. Nayam. So, Jnana, Nayam, Parijata, these are the 3 factors of action.
So Jnana, Neya, and Pariknyata. It's not Pariknyanata. I pronounced wrongly before. It's Pariknyata. Okay. So yeah, we have this example. If somebody is studying engineering, so he's going there to receive knowledge. But what is the objective of the knowledge there? The objective, the Neya there is not that I'm going to this engineering college because I want the knowledge of engineering. How many people go to an engineering college or any college for that matter because they want the knowledge? They go there because, oh, in the future I want to be employed and I want to have a good job so that I can have a nice family and I can enjoy my future. My future is secured is what the thinking is now. So in this case, the objective of that activity is that the person wants to be employed and then enjoyment. So like that, and the knower and the person himself who's going to the college. So like this, there are 3 motivators of action: jnana, jnaya, and pariknyata. Then Krishna explains the 3 components or elements of action. Let's see what they are.
3 constituents of action, components or elements of action or any work done. Karanam is the instrument by which the action is done, senses. Karma is the action and the karata is the doer. Say, if a person wanted to be an eloquent speaker, then the person has to be there, karta, doer. Voice has to be there, karanam or the instrument, and the person has to speak, that is the karma or the action, and the person speaks several times, and by that he becomes a good speaker.
So the three constituents of action, karanam, karma, and karta, the instrument or the senses by which the action is carried out, the action itself, and the doer of the action. So if we see this example of an eloquent speaker, if one wants to become an eloquent speaker, what is the instrument? What is the sense that he requires is his voice. First of all, he should be able to speak, voice box. And the person itself, right? So the doer, he himself. And the action itself is what that he has to speak several times so that by practice he can become an eloquent speaker. So these are the three constituents of action, Krishna says. This is a little technical, but again, we don't have to worry about all this because we want to focus on bhakti yoga. Okay, so anyway, we'll summarize the first 18 chapters before we end today's class.
Summary of verses 1 to 18. The 18th chapter begins by addressing the frequently asked question that seems to pop up again and again. If working in this world seems to attract karmic reaction and implicates us in a web of worldly complexity, is it not safer that we give up work altogether? Krishna disagrees and reiterates that activity is not bad per se. The root of entanglement is the materialistic mentality with which we act, thinking ourselves the controller and enjoyer. In reality, however, there are 5 causes which bring success to any activity: the individual soul, the body, the senses, the endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. Since we are only one of the 5, we should never have an overvalued estimation of ourselves. Thus, by working in a spirit of detachment, offering the results of labor towards a transcendental goal, one can function in this world and simultaneously remain completely aloof.
So one should never have an overvalued estimation of ourselves. Srila Prabhupada said, we are not great, God is great. Therefore, we must always worship God. Only Puris can puff up, Prabhupada would say. Nobody else can be puffed up. Okay, so with that, we come to the end of this section. In the next section, we will be revisiting the yoga ladder. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jaya.